Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. Ariel James stood in the middle of the country club's sunlit garden room, her belly round at 7 months, one hand cradling it like she was guarding something holy. In the other hand, she held a champagne flute filled with sparkling cider that caught the afternoon light like liquid gold. Around her, 40 guests leaned forward, eager for the moment she'd raise her glass. "At least my baby will have a father," she said sweetly, her smile so polished it belonged on the cover of a magazine. But to her older sister, Serena, seated quietly near the end of the table, that smile felt like a knife. It had been that way since they were kids, the practiced look Ariel gave just before she said something that sounded harmless to everyone else, but cut like glass to anyone who really knew her. The room erupted in applause, and the clinking of glasses echoed against the high windows as though Ariel had just announced a breakthrough cure for a disease rather than thrown a dart at her sister's heart. Serena's mother, Evelyn, actually stood to clap, her expression proud, as if Ariel had just delivered the kind of inspirational speech that would be quoted in family history. Serena sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap, the muscles in her jaw tight enough to hurt. Beside her, her 10-year-old son Jaden slipped his small hand into hers under the tablecloth. She felt the faint tremor in his fingers, and for a moment she worried that the cruelty of Ariel's words had broken something inside him. But what came next would prove that the boy everyone thought of as quiet and too soft for this world was made of something stronger than they ever expected. Serena James was 35 years old, a marketing manager for a growing tech startup downtown, and she had been raising Jaden alone for the past 2 years. At first, she hadn't chosen this life. Troy, her ex-husband, had chosen it for her when he vanished into the spiral of gambling, debt, and bad decisions. She still remembered the day the divorce papers were stamped. A rainy Tuesday in March, the courthouse steps slick beneath her boots, her breath clouding in the cold air as she walked away feeling lighter and lonelier at the same time. She had cried for 3 blocks, then stopped, wiped her face, and swore to herself she would never beg for someone to stay who had already chosen to leave. Jaden was her anchor, her miracle. He read books meant for kids twice his age, built Lego cities so elaborate they looked like architectural blueprints, and had the unnerving ability to notice things most adults missed. Teachers called him gifted, his counselors said he was remarkably mature, but to Serena he was simply her boy, her reason for showing up every day. Her family, however, called him a reminder of her bad choices, the child of a marriage that had fallen apart. And Ariel, who had always been the family's golden girl, never missed an opportunity to remind Serena that Jaden's father wasn't there, as if absence were a permanent stain that could never be scrubbed clean. Ariel was 32, and if Serena had been the quiet storm in the family, Ariel was the rainbow that followed it. At least that's how everyone saw her. She had married Mason right out of college in a lavish ceremony that cost more than Serena's yearly salary. Their wedding photos had been featured in a local magazine spread under the headline, "A Perfect Match," complete with pictures of Ariel laughing gracefully under strings of fairy lights while Mason looked at her like she was the sun. They had moved into a white colonial house in Westchester, bought a luxury SUV, and filled their Instagram feeds with matching sweater Christmas photos that made everyone else's lives look inadequate. Mason, now 34, owned a thriving chain of real estate offices and walked into every family event with his polo shirt pressed and his khakis just so, calling everyone champ or buddy in that easy, slightly condescending way that made Serena's skin crawl. He liked to brag about being self-made, about building his success from scratch, as if that gave him the authority to measure everyone else's worth. Ariel basked in it, calling him her provider, talking about how blessed she was to have found a man who could give her the life she deserved. To Serena, it all felt like a carefully staged play, and she was always assigned the role of the struggling understudy, present but never applauded. Their mother, Evelyn, had perfected the art of keeping up appearances. At 58, she still wore pearls to brunch and insisted that family arguments be saved for behind closed doors, preferably never spoken of at all. She had never forgiven Serena for leaving Troy. "Women work through these things," she'd said when Serena first told her she was filing for divorce. "You don't just walk away. You fix it." In Evelyn's world, failure wasn't an option, at least not the kind that other people could see. Her father, Richard, was 60 and had mastered the quiet art of disappearing into his newspaper or his golf game whenever conflict arose. He had taught Serena practical things, how to change a tire, how to throw a curveball, but never how to stand up to the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. That morning, Evelyn had called Serena 3 times before she even left for the baby shower. The first call came while Serena was packing Jaden's lunch. The second interrupted her shower. The third came as she was buttoning Jaden's polo shirt, the good one, the one without the faint stain near the collar. "Serena, please don't make this about you," Evelyn had said over speakerphone. "This is Ariel's special day. She's been planning it for months. Just smile, give your gift, and try to blend in." Blend in. The words had landed like a familiar weight. That was Serena's role in this family. Stay quiet while Ariel shined. Stay calm while Ariel soared. The Rosewood Country Club looked like something out of a movie when Serena pulled her 8-year-old Honda Civic into the parking lot. The cars around her gleamed, Mercedes, BMWs, a Tesla or two, and Jaden noticed, though he didn't say a word. He just smoothed the front of his shirt, grabbed the gift bag from the back seat, and asked softly, "You remembered the card, right, Mom?" Serena smiled despite the tightness in her chest. "I remembered everything. We're going to be perfect guests today." She wanted to believe it, wanted to think they could just get through the day without becoming the subject of whispered conversations later. But as soon as they stepped into the garden room, Serena felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes sweep over her. Pink and gold balloons arched over the gift table like a pastel rainbow. Lace-wrapped mason jars filled with roses and pearls sat on every table, glowing in the afternoon light. A glittering banner stretched across one wall, declaring, "A little princess is on the way." The air smelled faintly of vanilla and champagne, and the sound of chatter buzzed like bees. Evelyn greeted them with her practiced church smile. "Serena, you made it," she said, her eyes darting down to check Serena's outfit. "And Jaden, don't you look handsome?" She leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough for Serena to hear. "Remember, this is about Ariel. Don't ruin it with any of your drama." Serena pressed her lips together, resisting the urge to reply. She just guided Jaden to their seats, reminding herself to breathe. The celebration ran like clockwork at first. Ariel sat in the center of the room on what could only be described as a throne, a chair draped with ribbons and flanked by piles of beautifully wrapped gifts. Mason hovered behind her like a proud king guarding his queen. "This one's from Aunt Gloria," Ariel announced as she opened a box containing a designer diaper bag, holding it high for everyone to admire. "Oh, it's perfect," she squealed as the room clapped. Each gift seemed more extravagant than the last. A $1,000 stroller from her book club friends, a silver rattle set from Mason's business partner, a custom crib from Evelyn. It felt like the entire event was a parade of wealth, a chance for Ariel to put her picture-perfect life on display. Serena sat at their table, quietly sipping lemonade, her fingers worrying the edge of her napkin. Jaden busied himself with the cake in front of him, but Serena could see how he kept glancing at Ariel, his young brow furrowed as if trying to decode the subtle digs that floated through her syrupy, sweet words. When Ariel finally reached for Serena's gift, she paused just long enough to make everyone notice. "Oh," she said with a smile that made Serena brace herself. "This one's from my sister." Ariel pulled the quilt from the bag, shaking it out as if afraid it might hold dust. "How crafty," she said, her tone laced with the kind of false praise that was worse than outright criticism. A few guests chuckled, unsure if they were supposed to laugh or not. Serena straightened her back and forced a smile. "I embroidered each square by hand," she explained, her voice soft but steady. "Each one has a different nursery rhyme. The back is made of organic cotton. It's hypoallergenic." Ariel nodded politely but folded the quilt and placed it aside, far from the prized gifts. "Well," she said lightly, "we can't all afford Bergdorf's, can we?" The words were coated in sugar, but everyone at the table knew they were meant to sting. Some of us just have to be creative with limitations. The laughter that followed was thin and nervous, but Evelyn smiled approvingly as if Ariel had just made a clever joke. Serena felt Jaden shift beside her, his fork pausing midair. His little shoulders tensed, and she knew that somewhere deep inside him, a storm was starting to gather. "Actually," Jaden said quietly, setting his fork down, "handmade gifts are more valuable than store-bought ones." The room went silent for a beat before Mason broke it with a booming laugh. "Look at this guy doing math at a baby shower," he said, ruffling Jaden's hair. "Too bad life isn't about counting hours, champ. It's about what you can actually provide." Evelyn leaned forward from her place of honor, seizing her chance to deliver one of her lessons. "Some women just make poor choices," she said clearly enough for everyone to hear, her eyes fixed on Serena. Thankfully, Ariel learned from her sister's mistakes. She waited for the right man and built a proper foundation. Mrs. Peterson from church nodded sagely. "Children need both parents," she added. "You know, studies show kids from broken homes struggle more with school, relationships, everything." Serena opened her mouth to respond, but Jaden beat her to it, his voice stronger now. "I'm in the gifted program at school," he said evenly. "My grades are better than most kids in my class." "Of course they are, sweetheart," Ariel replied, her tone dripping with exaggerated sympathy. "You're doing the best you can considering everything. It's just children need a man to look up to, someone who can teach them how to be strong, how to be providers." She stood, cradling her belly with both hands in that practiced, glowing way. "I just feel so blessed," she continued, her voice carrying across the room like a sermon. "At least my baby will have a father, someone to teach him to throw a ball, to tie a tie, to be there for every birthday and every important moment." The room erupted into applause again, as though Ariel had just delivered a TED Talk about family values instead of ripping her nephew's heart out. Serena felt heat rush to her face as she gathered her purse, ready to leave before she said something she could never take back. She stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Come on, Jaden," she said tightly, but his small hand wasn't in hers. Jaden's chair was pushed back with careful precision, and he was standing now, his serious brown eyes scanning the room. The chatter and laughter that had filled the air moments ago faded into silence, as if someone had turned down the volume. "Mom, wait," he said, his voice carrying clear and steady. Serena froze, her heart thudding in her chest. "I have something to say." Guests turned, some smiling indulgently, expecting a sweet moment from the quiet boy. Evelyn smiled too, leaning forward. "What is it, darling? Do you want to say something nice to Aunt Ariel about the baby?" Jaden shook his head. "No, Grandma. I have a question. For Uncle Mason." His voice was calm, almost casual, but Serena felt a chill run down her spine. Mason looked amused. "Shoot, buddy," he said easily. "What's on your mind?" Jaden glanced at Ariel, then back at Mason. "Should I tell everyone about your other family?" The room went deathly still. The clink of glasses stopped. Even the catering staff froze mid-pour. Mason's smile faltered for the first time that afternoon. "What are you talking about, champ?" he said, his laugh sounding forced now, brittle around the edges. "Kids say the funniest things, huh?" But Jaden wasn't laughing. He reached into his pocket and calmly pulled out his phone. "Remember last month when you took me to that baseball game?" he asked, looking Mason straight in the eye. "You said you had to stop by your office first. But we didn't go to your office. We went to a house in Riverside, a blue house with a broken mailbox and a swing set in the front yard. Murmurs rippled through the guests like wind through tall grass. Ariel's face drained of color. "A lady named Brianna opened the door," Jaden continued, his voice as steady as if he were presenting a science project at school. "She was wearing scrubs, she's a nurse, and there was a little girl with her. She ran to you and called you Daddy. You picked her up and spun her around." Mason opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "That's ridiculous," he managed finally, his voice breaking on the last word. "I was showing a house to a client. Kids misunderstand things." But Jaden didn't flinch. "She has green eyes with a little brown spot in the left one. Just like yours," he said evenly. "Her name is Callie. She told me she was 4 years old. She said you bought her a kitten for her birthday. And you told Brianna you'd see them next Tuesday, like you always do." Ariel's breath caught audibly. "Mason," she whispered, her hand gripping the edge of the chair like she needed something to keep her standing. Mason stepped forward, reaching for her, but she jerked back as if his touch burned. "Baby, it's not what it sounds like," he pleaded. "Don't lie to me," Ariel snapped, her voice suddenly sharp as glass. "Not here. Not now." Jaden swiped across his phone screen, turning it toward the crowd. Photos filled the display. Mason pushing a little girl on a swing. Mason sitting at a picnic table with Brianna, wearing an apron that read Dad's Grill Master. Gasps filled the air, and someone dropped a glass, the shatter echoing in the stunned silence. Ariel grabbed the phone from Jaden, staring at the photos as tears welled in her eyes. Then she hurled the phone at Mason, barely missing his shoulder. "You lied to me!" she screamed, knocking over the gift table as she stepped back. Presents crashed to the floor, ribbons and boxes scattering like confetti. 6 years we've been married. 6 years, Mason. And you've been living a whole other life. The perfect baby shower crumbled into chaos. Guests whispering, some pulling out their phones to record, Evelyn clutching her pearls, Mason's mother covering her mouth as though she might be sick. And Serena just stood there, one hand on Jaden's shoulder, watching as the truth her son had carried for weeks finally tore the shiny surface off her sister's perfect world. The room exploded into noise, gasps, murmurs, chairs scraping across the marble floor as guests either tried to leave quietly or stayed frozen in horrified fascination. Mason stepped forward again, his hands outstretched. "Ariel, please let me explain." But Ariel was already backing toward the corner of the room, tears streaking her perfectly made-up face. "Explain what?" she spat, her voice cracking. "That you have another daughter? That you've been spending every Tuesday night with her, while I sat at home, posting our perfect life online." Mason's mask of confidence shattered completely as he glanced around the room, looking for an ally. None of his business partners would meet his eye. Evelyn stood rigid, her face pale, clutching the edge of the table for balance. "This has to be a mistake," she whispered, but no one moved to comfort her. Jaden stepped closer to Serena and spoke, his voice quiet but carrying. "He told me it was our secret," he said simply, "but secrets like that hurt people." His words seemed to slice through the noise, and for a moment silence fell again. Ariel sank into her chair, the throne-like seat now looking like a place of exile, not honor. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed while the carefully staged baby shower decorations drooped around her like a set collapsing at the end of a play. The aftermath came fast and merciless. Club staff began ushering guests out, murmuring polite apologies as though any amount of politeness could erase what had just happened. Mason tried once more to approach Ariel, but she looked up at him with eyes blazing. "Get out," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Think about our baby," he begged, desperation bleeding through every word. "You mean the baby you've been lying to for 9 months." Ariel snapped, rising to her feet. "Get out, Mason. And don't come back until my lawyer calls yours." He hesitated only a second before leaving, shoulders hunched, the king dethroned. Evelyn turned on Serena, her voice trembling with rage. "Did you know about this? Did you put him up to this?" Serena stepped between her mother and her son, her tone steady. "No, Mom, but I'm glad he told the truth. Someone had to." Evelyn's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She just turned away, following Ariel to the bathroom where sobs still echoed. Later, when the last guest had gone and the room was being cleared of overturned chairs and broken glass, Serena knelt beside Jaden and cupped his face in her hands. "You okay, baby?" she asked softly. Jaden nodded, though his eyes were shining. "Mom," he whispered, "did I do the right thing?" Serena hugged him tight. "You stood up for what's true," she said against his hair. "That's always the right thing. Families don't have to be perfect, Jaden. They just have to be honest." Months later, when Ariel gave birth to a baby boy, Serena was the one holding her hand in the delivery room. And when Ariel looked at her sister with tearful gratitude, Serena knew something had shifted. The picture-perfect family had been shattered, but what grew in its place was something stronger, something real. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.